The city of Florissant, Missouri is considered to be one of the most beautiful and safest cities of its size in the United States. It's the third oldest city in the state of Missouri and is located just southwest of Alton, Illinois, and just north of St. Louis. Over the last 2 centuries, this town has overcome many hardships to grow and prosper. Not much is known about this town and its history, and local residents are proud of its heritage. However, there is one fact that is not talked about too often. You see, this lovely little hamlet of 55,000 should be considered one of the most haunted cities in America. Gretchen Crank, former director of archives for the Shrine of Old St. Ferdinand, has experienced several unexplained incidents during her time in Florissant. But the one she remembers the most was at her home on a sunny spring afternoon.
Okay, well, our house is on St. Catherine Street. It was built about 1905. One interesting thing about our house is that people that live there seem to get very attached to it, and even though it's over 100 years old, we're just the third owner, and we've been there since 1977. And the first family that lived there was a Motten family, and was built by Mr. Motten, Felix Motten, and he lived there with I think they had 9 children and raised his children there, and he lived there with his family till about 1945 when he passed away. And then his widow moved right next door and lived with a son and a daughter-in-law until she passed away about in the 1960s. Really unexplainable ghost story to the house was about 1978 or 79. We'd been there just a few years, and it was in the middle of a very sunny spring afternoon. I had my daughter with me. She was about 3 by this time, and we were backing out of the driveway in the car to go pick up my older son from school. And as I was backing out of the driveway, I just kind of glanced back at the house, and the window on the 2nd floor on the front of the house, I just kind of looked up that way at the house, and there was a person in that window looking out that window and looking down into the driveway and saw me see her. It was a woman, and it just, it was so real that I was sure there was somebody in the house, which when she saw me see her, she just kind of, pulled back away from the window, and I was so upset over it because I had been home all afternoon and my daughter and I had been there in the house, and I thought there's somebody has gotten in here and they've been hiding upstairs and waiting for us to leave and they're going to rob us or whatever. And so I pulled back in. I left my daughter. I let her play out in the yard. I said, I'll be back in just a minute. I went in through the back door and picked up a softball bat that was on the back porch that the kids had been playing softball in. But I don't know what I thought I was going to do when I went in there. Locked it back up, and we went on, and I was a little shaken by it, but didn't think too much of it. And it was probably 4 years later, we had done some research on the house and on the family, on the Motten family, and we'd made contact with one of the daughters of Felix and Agatha Motten, who lived in Maryland, and we were out that way on vacation, and we had made arrangements to go and visit them, and they were going to give us some information on the house and on the family. And she was, we were sitting in their parlor, and she was showing us their family album, and she showed me this photograph of her mother and father, and it was that woman that I had seen. She had was really kind of dressed the same. She had a white blouse on, you know, kind of high neck blouse, and a lot of hair piled on top of her head, or a little hat or something like that. And it was just, and it just kind of gave me chills. You know, of course I didn't say anything to her daughter about it. I didn't want her to think I was insane, but I told my husband, I said, this is the woman that was, you know, the same woman that I had seen in the house.
In another strange incident, on an early fall morning, Gretchen was readying herself for work. When she was about to leave, she could not find her keys. Gretchen explains.
The most recent thing that I cannot explain happened about a year ago. I do some work down at St. Ferdinand Shrine, which is just a couple of blocks from my house, and I was going to go down there and work in the archive one morning, and was going to drive down there, even though it's a couple of blocks from my house, but I was carrying books and notebooks down, and I couldn't find my car keys. And I'm looking and looking and looking. I even took my purse and just dumped it out because I thought they've got to be in here somewhere, and I finally just gave up. I picked up another set of house keys that I had. I didn't even take my purse with me. Picked up my books and carried them and walked on down there.
While walking to the shrine, she was bothered by the fact that her keys were now missing. She decided to return home to look again, and when she got inside, a strange thing happened.
And when I came home, sitting on top of my purse, kind of draped across the top of my purse, is my car keys. You know, they're just kind of laying there. They're just, you know, it was kind of funny in a way, but, you know, there's nobody else there, nobody home. You know, the house had been locked up. So that's the only other thing that, you know, that I think of as specifically really unexplainable.
Prior to Gretchen becoming the director of archives at the shrine, there was a young man who often visited the shrine as a child and grew up to take over the caretaker's duties from his grandparents. Andrew Theising, now a historian and professor at Southern Illinois University at Edwardsville, experienced so many ghostly activities at the shrine of Old St. Ferdinand that he came to regard this phenomena as commonplace.
Oh, I think Florissant certainly does have a tremendous history. It has a tremendous appreciation for its history, and wherever you have an old historical place, I think you'll find ghosts. So I think Florissant could certainly be a contender for being a very haunted old city. The shrine was a very unusual place, and it was almost creepy at times. I was never scared while I was there. I was never fearful, but it was just weird what happened down there. My grandparents were the caretakers there in the early 1970s. So when I was a little guy, I used to go down and visit my grandparents at the shrine. And they never told me ghost stories, but they sure told me about the weird things that went on. I probably would have been terrified as a child, but the adults certainly had heard the stories that there were footsteps, and that there were people going around, walking around in the shrine, to the point where my grandfather, I think, took some sort of a lawn tool, like a machete or something, and actually walked around trying to find who was hanging out in the building who shouldn't be there, and there was no one there. And I heard that same thing when I was there. I didn't grab any lawn tools to go track them down, but I heard the footsteps, and I could hear, I distinctly remember, you could hear, honestly, the sound, it made me think of rosary beads. It made me think of rosary beads. And the Jesuits who ran that church for so many years, they used to wear long rosaries with long beads as part of their uniform. I never heard anything in the church proper itself, but the old convent and the old rectory is where everything happened. And I can remember living in the old rectory, always hearing footsteps, and I remember hearing noises, and so many times these noises would, you would think that somebody was there. And it's a museum, and so there were always, lots of people had keys, and there was always people coming and going, so I often ignored it. But sometimes it would happen in the middle of the night, and you know that there's not a tour group coming through in the middle of the night, and so you would hear this activity, and there would be no one there. But there was one time that I was asleep, and I'm not sure what time of day it was anymore, but I woke up. I guess it must have been It was dark out. And I was sleeping, and I was very, very cold. And I woke up, and my entire bed was stripped. I was sleeping on a mattress, and the blankets and the sheets were out in the living room. I'm not a sleepwalker, and my roommate was asleep. I mean, he wasn't playing a prank on me. And so here it is at whatever wee hour of the morning, and I'm having to make my bed because something has dragged all my sheets out of my room, which I just thought was very unusual. I remember sitting upstairs I call it the living room, but it was sort of a breezeway upstairs on the second floor of the rectory where the caretaker's apartment was. And I was sitting on a sofa, and all of a sudden, the door that went out to the front porch blows open. And this wind is just whipping through the door and down this long, skinny living room area. Now, this wind is blowing so hard. Now, at the opposite end of this space is a 6-foot aluminum stepladder. And this wind is blowing so strong that this stepladder is actually starting to shake and move and scoot. That is how strong this wind is. And I look outside, there's not a tree moving outside. It's not like it's a stormy day and the trees are all bobbing. The trees are all perfectly still, yet this wind is just roaring through this room. Well, right inside that door is this large cabinet. And pretty soon, this one door opens up of the cabinet, as if the wind were blowing it open. And then the other door opened up, but it opened up into the wind. And it was just very, very bizarre, because this is all happening right in front of me. And I got up, and I took one finger, and I pushed the door closed, the porch door closed with one finger, and everything stopped.
Gretchen and Andrew are only two of a host of residents I've talked to about their ghostly encounters. Other residents preferred not to be included in this program. However, ghostly phenomena in Florissant is well documented, and there are more stories to tell. In the meantime, should you decide to visit Florissant or the Shrine of Old St. Ferdinand and you think you hear voices, or perhaps see a presence when there really is no one there, it may just be your imagination. Or it just may be Florissant spirits of the past with a story to tell you. Sleep well.